Hello, listeners. It's Gunter here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organization cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked #1 in Australia and #5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. As most of you know, this is a place where I tend to go beyond the headlines, the hashtags, to take a look at some of the deep intersections between culture, psychology, and in this instance, the brain. Yep. Today, I want to dismantle some of the persistent myths about masculinity through evidence, not platitudes. And the way that I'm going to do that is by going through modern neuroscience, which is showing us that men's brains are not hardwired for emotional suppression, rigid thinking, or isolation. Instead, the story is one of adaptability, emotional integration, and deep capacity for connection. And here's the kicker. These capacities aren't just theoretical. They actually show up in brain scans, in hormone studies, and in longitudinal research that tracks men's well-being over years. So let's start with some of the myths we've inherited. Our cultural script basically says that real men control emotions by shutting them down, show strength through certainty and stubbornness and rationality and reason, and prove independence, avoiding closeness. But neuroscience shows us that these traits are not genetic imperatives. They're learned behaviors. And because the brain is adaptable, it's plastic, they can be unlearned and replaced. Essentially, the story is this. By the time we're born, basically our brain has all the neurons that it's ever going to really get. What's different is that through living and experiencing, the brain begins to create different types of connections. And this is particularly important. So neuroplasticity research by Draganski and so on in 2006 demonstrates that repeated practice, whether it's juggling or mindfulness, physically alters brain structure. The same applies to emotional and relationship skills. So if you train suppression, you strengthen those circuits. If you train integration, you strengthen those instead. In the fundamental masculine ideal, control often means don't feel. But one of the things that was found in a 2013 functional MRI study by Goldin, they found that chronic emotional suppression increases activity in the amygdala and reduces connectivity with the prefrontal cortex, the brain's regulation hub. That means more stress, not less. Conversely, labeling emotions, affect labeling, that is simply naming feelings, reduces amygdala activity within seconds. And this was found by Lieberman in the study. Now, this is why in therapy, when a man says aloud, I feel hurt or I feel anxious, it's not just cathartic, it's an absolute neurological shift toward calmer regulation. So let me give you a bit of a case example. I worked with a client in his mid-40s who basically lived by the push-through mentality. Once he started practicing emotional labeling during daily check-ins, his stress headaches began to decrease and his blood pressure began to improve. Now that is exciting because what it says is that that's neuroscience, meaning lived experience. Now, one of the other things that's often rewarded in traditional men's lives is being rigid. So the ability to stand firm and hold on is treated as a virtue. But research by a team run by Scott in 2015 on cognitive flexibility shows that individuals with higher flexibility scores have better problem-solving skills, lower stress reactivity, and improved interpersonal relationships. So don't worry about the studies that I'm quoting. I'm going to include a one-page sheet that you'll be able to access through the website and part of the transcript. Now, what's that flexibility about? Well, this flexibility depends on prefrontal basal ganglia circuits, which are strengthened when we actively seek novelty and tolerate uncertainty. In other words, we become more resilient. So in therapy, reframing exercises, for example, generating 3 alternative interpretations of a partner's behavior, stimulates these circuits. Over time, men trained in flexibility not only handle conflict better, but they show more openness to feedback in work and relationships. All right, so what does this mean then basically in terms of social bonding? What's the neuroscience of connection? And as you know, a friend of mine, Dr. Mark Williams, wrote a brilliant book called The Connected Species. So let me blow a particular myth, and that is that man, the lone wolf. Now, that image is potentially culturally appealing, but neurochemically false. There's been a study by Feldman that found that oxytocin levels in fathers interacting with their infants mirror those of mothers, and that these hormonal shifts correlate with activation in the brain areas linked to empathy and caregiving. Okay, so in simple terms, it's not just mothers that bond with the baby, but it's fathers bonding with the baby to the same degree if we allow nature to take its course. In a 2018 study by Waldinger and Schultz, part of the Harvard study of adult development, they found that the quality of those close relationships, not wealth, not status, or independence, was the single strongest predictor of long-term health and happiness for men. So let me stress this again. Social connection isn't an optional extra. It's in fact a biological need. It's an emotional need and it's a social need. And when men are discouraged from intimacy, those neural reward pathways weaken. But they can be reactivated through experience. So, what does this mean in terms of reshaping men's social experience, men's lived experience? Does this have a bearing on therapy? Well, here are some science-based strategy. What we need to do, and you guys know that I'm going to sound like a broken record, and as much as I'm going to keep repeating it, because it's not being heard, I will repeat it. So what we need to do is we need to normalize emotional literacy. Integrate labeling feelings into sessions. Lieberman's research shows this calms the amygdala and enhances self-regulation. Remember, most of us as men are socialized into a condition called alexithymia, which is that our emotional vocabulary is narrow. So we need to expand it. And this is what this is about. Secondly, we need to challenge cognitive rigidity. So as a therapist, one of the things that I do is I use perspective-taking exercises that train prefrontal basal ganglia circuits, right? So, it's not just my interpretation of what I think may be going on for the person's partner or the person themselves, but rather I get the person to begin to think about it from different perspectives. Do you have an alternative explanation for what might be going on? Is this person truly angry with you, or are they angry because they're actually hurt or scared? The third element in this is that it's about reinforcing bonding. So this is good for group work or in a setting where we can use shared problem solving. Now, interestingly enough, this is the very thing which boosts oxytocin and the dopamine reward systems. So again, the neuroscience and the neurobiology, neurochemistry, neurophysiology is critical in the process of change. Now, the whole point of doing this is to make emotional openness, adaptability, and connection neurologically rewarding, not just culturally permissible. So when people tell you that, men getting in touch with their feelings is not really necessary, they just need to be accepted for the traditional men that they are, i.e. stoic, emotionally shut down, rigid, and status conscious. That's rubbish. It's utter bullshit. And the stuff that comes out on the internet, especially on YouTube around this, is just appalling. If I could get that stuff censored based on falsehood, I would. So by aligning early education with neuroscience, we got to remember that we're not just helping boys individually. We're actually shaping future norms of masculinity. We are deconstructing patriarchy. So you might then go, well, what does this really matter beyond the individual? Well, the data's clear. Emotional suppression, rigidity, and isolation aren't biologically inevitable. They are culturally conditioned patterns. And in one of the next few podcasts, I'm going to be talking about a way of formulating and framing this that actually comes out of sociology, but has a deep connection with psychological anthropology. These patterns have measurable costs in men's mental and physical health. By reshaping male socialization to align with how the brain thrives, we can improve not just individual well-being, but relational, organizational, and community health. It's a reflexive process. So to close up today, and I could do a few hours more on this topic, but I wanted to get some of the core ideas up and running, because I need people to think factually, not based on opinion, not based on mythology, not based on hearsay or old science. Our brain, men's brains, are wired for connection. We're wired for adaptability, and we're wired for emotional integration, just like women's. There's no such thing as male brains being different from women's brains in that sense. If we start rewarding these traits culturally and reinforcing them neurologically, we'll be moving towards a masculinity that's so much healthier and certainly, and this is very, very important, more humane and therefore more sustainable. Because right now, in some of the ways that we're going, we're heading for extinction. So, folks, thanks for listening to Inspire Change with Gunter. If you have any questions or if you would like me to speak more on this topic, I'm absolutely up for it. Love to hear from you. And by the way, quick plug, Amulets of Power is out. Please check it out. I am sure you will find the story exciting, riveting, and just a simply good read. Check it out on our website. So join me next time as we continue to blend science, psychology, anthropology, philosophy, and social transformation into conversations that matter.
Greetings to all our listeners. This week, we have a 2-time shout out for our gratitude goes out to those of you listening in Oklahoma and Arkansas. We want to thank our listeners in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Ada, Oklahoma, as you brought your states to the top 15 global listeners list. Congratulations! We thank you for tuning in and promoting positive social change. This makes you a part of Gunter's efforts in transforming not only men's lives, but lives in general, and we're grateful you've joined us. I, Devonna Prinzi, the co-executive producer, and our showrunner, Miranda Spagner-Sapone, sincerely thank you and ask that you please take time to like, follow, subscribe, and share as your efforts make a difference to everyone here at Inspire Change with Gunter. Please remember, if you want to share your story of social change, feel free to reach out to the show directly. Please see the show notes for our contact information. As always, thank you to each and every one of our listeners, but most importantly, please keep inspiring positive social change.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.